Now, amidst the possibility of an attack by the United States and the State of Israel, Iran is getting ready with more Ghadir radars. The buildup in West Asia has swelled, and it comes after satellite images of US stationing 6 B-2 nuclear bombers at Diego Garcia have appeared. All this as the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is set to meet with President Donald Trump on Monday. And our next report gets you the latest in terms of what is happening in West Asia.
The stakes couldn't be higher. Iran and the U.S. are locking horns. Both sides are gearing up for what looks like a dangerous confrontation. Iran is heightening efforts to bolster its air defenses to insulate itself from a potential preemptive strike by the U.S. and Israel. It's a clear signal of Tehran's defense posture and deepening strategic anxieties. Iran is accelerating the deployment of 9th Ghadir-class over-the-horizon radar systems across key locations, significantly enhancing its long-range surveillance and early warning capabilities. Tehran is constructing 2 Ghadir-class radars near the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, maritime arteries vital to global oil shipments. These can enable Tehran to monitor Western naval movements and potentially complicate U.S. operations in the event of a conflict. Another Ghadir radar site has been completed further north near the city of Tabriz. Unlike traditional radar systems, Ghadir is a phased array radar with a detection range of 100 kilometers. First unveiled in 2013, it is capable of detecting stealth aircrafts, ballistic and cruise missiles. Along with the Russian-made S-300, the Ghadir radars form a crucial component of Iran's integrated air defense system. The U.S. has moved stealth B-2 bombers to Diego Garcia, a strategic base in the Indian Ocean, capable of launching precision strikes on Iran's underground nuclear facilities. In these satellite images, 6 B-2 bombers can be seen. That's 30% of the U.S. Air Force's stealth bomber fleet. These bombers can carry 70,000 kg of munitions designed to penetrate reinforced targets. The deployment of stealth bombers comes shortly after Pentagon announced deployment of aircraft carrier Carl Vinson to West Asia. This will be the second aircraft carrier in the region after USS Harry S. Truman. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is all set to meet President Trump on Monday. Reports suggest Trump will speaking to Netanyahu on his strategy to bomb Iran if diplomacy fails. Iran, on the other hand, is willing to engage in dialogue with the U.S. as equals, without clarifying whether it will participate in direct talks. As the U.S. builds up its military presence and Gulf states distance themselves from confrontation, Iran's defiance signals that any misstep could ignite a larger conflict. The stakes are higher than ever, and West Asia remains a powder keg waiting for a spark. Bureau Report, WION World is one.
All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening in West Asia at the moment, we are joined this broadcast by Professor Giorgio Cafero, who is a professor at the Georgetown University and CEO of Gulf State Analytics. Now, Professor, let me in fact start off by asking you this. The clear build-up by the Americans of moving their B-2 stealth nuclear bombers to Diego Garcia and also these repeated attacks that they've carried out on the Houthis. The fact that Donald Trump is meeting with Netanyahu this coming Monday, does it indicate that the United States is preparing for some kind of a unilateral strike on Iranian nuclear facilities along with the State of Israel?
Thank you. Good to be on your network. You know, that certainly is a very, very possible outcome right now. I do think Trump does want diplomacy to succeed, and he does want to see the U.S. and Iran reach some new understanding and to get a second nuclear deal in place. But at the same time, I think what he's trying to do is intensify the pressure on Tehran, sending a message to the Iranians that the window of time for diplomacy will not be open forever, and that Iran needs to come to the negotiating table, make huge concessions to the U.S., and the alternative would be being attacked by the U.S. and/or Israel. So basically, I think this is a pressure tactic but it doesn't mean that a military confrontation is inevitable. Trump does want to broker, he wants to have brokered another nuclear deal. Whether or not that's going to be possible remains to be seen. Many stumbling blocks, but again, I repeat, as intense as the situation is, a military confrontation is definitely not inevitable.
Interesting, but consider this situation from the Iranian side. The Iranians, in good faith, had negotiated a JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. In 2015, it was called the Iranian Nuclear Deal. They signed it with the United States and 5 other world powers. Donald Trump in 2018 described it to be the worst negotiated deal in American history and unilaterally walked out of the JCPOA. With that being the context, why should the Iranians trust the Americans this time now? Because there could be a change of guard again in 4 years' time, and the next president may rubbish a deal signed by President Trump.
Well, you're absolutely right. The Iranians complied with JCPOA. The U.S. did not. It was the United States that decided, as you said, in May 2018 to unilaterally sabotage the JCPOA. You know, in Iran, there was not a consensus in favor of the JCPOA. There were voices in the Islamic Republic who said the Americans are not trustworthy, and it is a foolish idea to sign this deal that requires Iran to make all these concessions vis-a-vis its nuclear program, and they spoke out against the idea of entering the JCPOA. And then after what Trump did in May 2018, those voices were rather vindicated. So you're completely right to point out that Iran has no reason to trust the United States. But the question is, what are Iran's options? The Iranian economy is in a horrible shape. Iran desperately needs sanctions relief. For better or for worse, certainly from the Iranian perspective, for worse, there's no way to achieve sanctions relief without some sort of negotiations in one form or another with the United States.
Right.
So absolutely, Iran has no reason to trust the United States. But again, this brings us to this question: what are the options that Iran has?
Interesting. Now, the Iranians have said that they are willing to negotiate with the Americans on equal terms. This is what they are saying, that there's got to be a face saver for the Iranians to, in fact, get back to the negotiating table again. But do you think, considering the manner in which Donald Trump negotiates, and also considering the fact that it is the Israelis who seem to be pressing more for either a confrontation or for Iran to not pursue its nuclear program, how do you think the Americans would respond to this Iranian demand that if negotiations are held, they should be on equal terms?
Well, there's a huge gap between the demands from the U.S. side, from the White House's side, and then from the Iranian side. To see this from the Iranian perspective, the leadership in Tehran does not want to have direct talks with the U.S. while under so-called maximum pressure. The concern in Iran is that this just sets a precedent that the U.S. can bully Iran, and then Iran, from a position of weakness, is forced to the negotiating table and has to make huge concessions to the United States.
Right.
The worry is that this sets a precedent where every time the U.S. wants something from Iran, they just bully the country, intensify pressure on the Islamic Republic, and then the Iranians concede. So yes, the Iranian leadership is open to talks with the U.S., but they've been quite clear that as long as there's pressure, these have to be indirect talks that go through countries such as the Sultanate of Oman, and direct talks can happen when the pressure ceases. I don't think the Trump administration is going to ease the pressure anytime soon. So probably we're going to see indirect talks, and this will make it very important for countries like Oman to be a diplomatic bridge.
All right. Will be interesting as to how this progresses from here. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Giorgio Cafero, for joining us and getting us that perspective then.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.